chair our panel discussion this afternoon of this really important topic, is dear to all of our hearts in terms of what the future holds post-COVID and as a consequence of the pandemic. And what's wonderful is that today we certainly see that each continent around the world is represented here on our panel. So a number of us here from Europe, also from Asia, and also Canada and Brazil, so representing Canada and South America. So fantastic organization to get us all together, Xavier, so well done on that. And I think also it's a really wonderful representation that in this changing time and this really critical time for all of our scholarly associations, that we might be a support for each other moving forward. So I think, you know, even getting us together today, hopefully we can support each other over the next coming years, which are going to be challenging, no doubt, for all of us. So thank you for that. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our panel members. So our plan is that each of the panel members are going to speak for about 10 minutes, an initial statement on your views on the challenges and the opportunities that face our associations as a consequence of the pandemic. So we have agreed in advance a sequence who's up first. So we're going to zoom over to Canada first of all and invite Trish to make her statement, and then following all of the statements, we do have one recording. Isabelle is teaching. We have two. Isabelle and Zhang is also recorded, I believe. So, so we'll have all the in-person virtual ones first, then we'll go over to the recordings, and Xavier, I know, is, and somebody, Eleanor, is working on the background and the technology. And then we'll open it up for discussion, and really looking forward to a really enjoyable afternoon and conversation. So Trish, can I hand over to you first? Trish McLaren, as you all probably know, is President of the Administrative Science Association of Canada. So over to you, Trish.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. I know we're all in very different time zones. I want to start, I do have my list of challenges and opportunities, but as I was writing them, there's some really important contextual information about ASAC that I think people need to know in order to understand our particular challenges and opportunities. And I suspect some of you are experiencing the same thing. So ASAC is over 60 years old. So we've been around for a very long time in various formats. And probably our heyday was through the 90s and into the 2000s, where we had our biggest numbers, where our membership numbers would be up around 800. But over the past 10 years, our membership numbers and our attendance at our conference has been declining a lot. So we have an annual conference. Our annual conference is located somewhere in Canada. Canada's very big geographically, very small population-wise, but very big geographically. So we've always tried to have the conference go in a kind of moving that we're central, and then we go west, and then we're central, and then we go east, and then we're central, so that we are getting to all of the various areas of Canada, but also understanding that it's actually very expensive, for example, people in Newfoundland or Nova Scotia on the East Coast to get to the West Coast when we have the conference there. It's cheaper and quicker for people in the Maritimes to go to England than it is for them to go to Vancouver. And so our geographic size has always been an issue for us. The other thing we're finding is that academics in Canada, and I suspect this is the same across the world, have far less funding for research and travel than they used to. So our universities are giving us far less money for travel to conferences than we used to get. And so academics are having to pick. They can maybe only go to one conference and they have to pick. And ASAC has never gained the legitimacy of the academy. Going to ASAC generally doesn't count on your CV for tenure and promotion because we're very small. And so when people need to choose, when they can only go to one conference, they will choose the academy because it counts more, but also in many cases, getting to the academy is easier than, like, if you're in Nova Scotia and the academy's in Boston, it's a much quicker trip than going to Vancouver for ASAC. So there's all of these factors that we're having to consider. And so what we're finding over the past few years is that our conference attendance and our membership hovers between 300 and 400 people, unless we're in Montreal. And the year that our conference is in Montreal, which is where it was supposed to be this coming summer, then we get lots of people because everybody wants to go to Montreal, right? So we find that our numbers change very much based on where we are and the appeal of the location. So over the past 10 years, we've already been dealing with significant financial issues. And we have made significant changes to our conferences over the past 5 years in order to save money. And it's only been in the past year that we have actually started to make a significant profit on our conference. And so for 5 years, I've been on the board since 2015. So about 5 years, we were losing money every year. We had we would go to Montreal, we would make money, we would spend 5 years losing money, we would go to Montreal, we would make money. And so we've made a lot of changes to our conference. And so that was all happening even without the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened, and we were not one of the first associations to announce that we were going virtual. So our conference is either late May or early June. This year it was going to be early June in Newfoundland. And we had about 350 people registered. And we announced, I don't even remember, we announced after the Academy, EGOS had announced, I think you guys had already announced that we were going to go virtual, but we were one of the first groups to actually run the conference virtually because of the timing. And so in June, we ran ASAC virtually, and we did it all ourselves on Zoom. So we did not use, like EURAM's using Speakeasy and AOM used a different one. We just had our staff members do it all on our website, and we all jumped into Zoom sessions. And so we had as many people on our virtual conference as we had thought we were going to get in Newfoundland. And we had people tell us that if they had known it was going to be virtual, that they would have submitted a paper. Because we were going to be in Newfoundland, for example, the West Coasters weren't going to come because it was too far. It takes too many hours and it's too expensive. And then also attending the conference were people who normally wouldn't have been there because they couldn't get away for 4 days for various reasons, mostly childcare. So both moms and dads who can't get away for 4 days for childcare reasons were able to attend the conference. So we considered the conference a success. The sessions were really well attended. There was lots of discussion during the sessions. Everything was synchronous. We didn't do anything asynchronous. But of course, we all missed the social part of it because ASAC is a very small conference. And over the past few years, we've been trying to differentiate ourselves from the Academy, and we are moving towards being a developmental conference. And so ASAC is incredibly friendly. We are very welcoming. We have many PhD students. PhD students in Canada tend to start at ASAC. We have, we're very social. And then there was one more thing. Just 2 years ago, in order to increase the developmental nature of the conference, we started accepting works in progress. So we had always been a conference that accepted full papers. And just for the past couple of years, we accept full papers and works in progress or extended abstracts. So like 6 to 8 pages of just work that you're doing so that you can come to the conference and it can actually be developmental, right? We can work with you on whatever your research project that is underway. So that's kind of the context of ASAC. And so our challenges that we're talking about now and that we're worried about and experiencing are people going to be willing to do virtual conferences in the long term? So I feel like this year it has been a novelty. People are doing things that they wouldn't normally do. They're trying things for the first time. And so people had already submitted papers to the conference. And so we are meeting in that way. But long term, and maybe we will, I actually don't know the answer to this. I don't know long term if people will continue to attend virtual conferences. And so that's a fear for us. My immediate fear for 2021 is that, like, our submission deadline is, I believe, the beginning of February. It might be March, but my immediate fear for 2021 is that academics this semester have been completely and utterly overwhelmed. In Canada, we're all doing virtual teaching. We're all doing remote teaching. And I have never seen so many academics close to breakdown as they are right now this month, right? Because that whole converting all their courses to remote, running all their asynchronous sessions, the students are struggling. Social media is going nuts, being angry at all the professors. Everyone's working really hard. It's not working out. They are exhausted. I don't think they have the time to write a paper to submit to ASAC. And so one of my immediate concerns for this coming conference is, does anybody actually have time to be thinking about research and writing a paper to submit to a conference? I don't know. I think the fact that we're now accepting extended abstracts might help. And maybe in January, if things are a bit calmer, I mean, we're still teaching remotely, but my understanding is the second time you do it, it's a little bit easier. Then maybe we'll get some more extended abstracts, but I am very concerned about submission numbers. And I think that that could be a situation for all of us, as deadlines are often, submission deadlines are often January and February. And then the other challenge, of course, is somehow trying through a virtual means to replicate the social aspect. And I think that other conferences coming after ASAC are doing, like, I know with EURAM there was social stuff. I know with AOM some of the divisions managed to do social things. I know EGOS did. We didn't have enough time with ASAC to figure that out, but that may be something that is being figured out, that by next year we'll be able to replicate in an online setting. And then the final thing is my concern that people don't understand how much it costs to run a virtual conference. So we subsidized in June because we had enough money. Finally, we had made money. We made the decision as ASAC to subsidize, because also everyone in Canada, all our funding had been frozen. We didn't have any money for conferences this year because the university just froze everything. So we only charged $100 for regular members and $50 for PhD students. And we supplemented that, which was fine for that year, but which we can't continue to do moving forward. And our current conference chair wants to bring in some kind of structured system like Speakeasy or like whatever AOM used. I'm not sure what they've decided on, which also increase costs. And so am I going to be able to convince my membership that they should be paying $200 to come to an online conference? The Academy charged $200 American. People were really angry, very, very angry about that, and then didn't feel that the conference was worth, the value they got out of the conference was worth it, because the Academy wasn't run very well virtually. So financially, that's my fear, is convincing people to pay the money. The opportunities that I see. So specifically for ASAC, where we're so geographically distant, and it's always been an issue, we are going to work very hard towards, when we are back in person, running a hybrid conference. Running a hybrid conference is more difficult than running in person or running virtual, right? Because you're trying to do both. And so if you have a person speaking in a room to a group of people in the room and they're trying to speak to people online, it's a whole different level of technical difficulty, and making sure that people who are at home are engaged. So that's more expensive and it's more work. But we are committed to figuring out how to do that, because we think for ASAC, it's a way to increase our numbers at our conference and increase our engagement, because now when we're running the conference in the East Coast, the West Coasters can join in online. And I'm even like, we could have a West Coast representative who runs a pub night, like have a Vancouver pub night, right? While everyone is in the East Coast, have a event. So I've got lots of ideas for a hybrid conference, and it's going to be really difficult, but that, I think for ASAC, it could be a really big win for us. And I think the forced virtual conference is a really good gateway to us to doing hybrid. And then again, as I said before, another opportunity is that we had people attend the conference who wouldn't have been able to, because they couldn't leave home for the weekend. And so they were able to attend, or they couldn't afford it, or they had other responsibilities. And I think that's a good opportunity for us. I think that we would talk about having like what we're doing today, and maybe bringing more people into ASAC who are from farther around the world, but there's always going to be the time zone issue. So even with ASAC, we're running a time zone conference we've got a 4.5 hour time zone difference just within ASAC, which is struggle to get everything in. So to then inviting people from Europe and from Australia and from Africa and from Asia, we're always going to be running into time zone issues. So I'm not sure how much we're going to be able to get out of that. So yeah, so that's my summary of how I feel the challenges and opportunities are for ASAC.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Trish, for sharing your experience and your, I suppose, unique circumstances in terms of geographic issues, etc. And it's fantastic that you're already identifying potential opportunities, but also having question marks as to the sustainability moving forward of everybody attending conferences online. So will we get exhausted from them all? And you know, or alternatively, will we, if they are cheaper, will our budget stretch a little bit further to attend more than one conference? So, so thank you for sharing that, Trish. We'll circle back when everybody's made their statements and discuss some of the important themes that you raised. So I'm going to hand over to Alketa now. Alketa is over in Brazil, and Alketa is the incoming president of the Brazil Management Association, Public Administration and Social Management. So over to you, Alketa. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you for the invitation. As Trish, I also will begin, we'll start with an overview of the ANPAD and the Brazilian context. I think it will make things easier to talk about challenges and opportunities. So ANPAD is the management association of Brazilian graduate programs. It gathers more than 100 PhD, Master of Science, professional master's programs in business and public management, accounting or tourism. It has a long historical trajectory, more than 40 years old. It was funded by a couple of members, but the Brazilian graduate market for graduate management program has increased basically in the same period as Trish highlighted about the Canada, so in the 90s. So now we have more than 200 programs, more than 100 are associated with ANPAD. We have an annual conference, the online virtual conference that just took place, gathered more than 1,600 members. So it's a very big conference, probably one of the bigger worldwide. And we also have important products similar to the GMAT test that graduate programs will use for students that want to apply for management programs. So it's financially sound despite the pandemics, not just because of the individual membership, but because of the members' fees paying for the events. We also have what we call divisional events. So OB, strategy, public management, each of the divisions of the ANPAD organize their own event. But mainly because of the products such as the ANPAD test, which would be similar to the GMAT or GRE test used internationally. Some different observations about the Brazilian graduate market. I would like to highlight that it's heavily influenced by governmental regulation. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it's based on a ranking of graduate programs, individual researchers or journals, management journals. And basically the funding used to be related to productivity. And by productivity, I mean basically academic productivity. It has yielded impressive results, particularly in the 19 and early 2000s. But now, I get into the challenges of the pandemic, those funding resources are challenged. So there is a high risk for public-private funding mix in Brazil. It's already on before the pandemic. It has to do, Brazil is commodity developing countries. So as long as the boom of the commodities were high, the public funding was high. The commodity crisis has basically influenced the Brazilian economy and has had consequences for the graduate management program. So we see an increase in cuts in terms of public funding of private and public institutions. And also we see a change in the nature of the governmental regulation. So it used to be more oriented toward international standards, and now it's evaluating more local orientation, local positioning. So different programs can position themselves in terms of what is their vision, what is their vision, what they want to do, if they are aiming to be Brazilian oriented, locally oriented, or internationally oriented. So there has been a qualitative change in terms of the regulation, and we don't know yet what would be the consequences of that. Of course, also the changes in the audiences or stakeholders of graduate programs, we are seeing already a decrease in the enrollment of students for management programs. In terms of the opportunity, I see a role, of course, particularly in the Brazilian case, in terms of the intensity of the collaboration that is necessary to tackle complex issues such as the pandemic, the vaccination program, etc. All of that demand managerial knowledge. So again, we are at the center of the crisis, but management is, we talk about health and we tend to not talk about health management. We talk about poverty, but we don't talk a lot about the management of poverty. But all those are the issues that are key to the Brazilian management context, and where the researchers, the academia, and our practitioner audiences play an important role. Another opportunity, of course, I think we talked about this opportunity along these days of conference, it's about the online platforms. And I would like to talk about online platforms as a form of strengthening intra and inter-organizational collaborations. Of course, we are going in the same direction as ASAC in terms of, we see a potential in terms of the hybrid conference, including more members. Of course, people are key to see, to have the physical presence back. As I already showed, it's a big conference. People like to go to ANPAD. Brazilian researchers massively go to ANPAD. But we see a role still for programs that are getting less funding, less traveling for the conference in the hybrid model. And I see, we are talking more about the potential of collaboration along the year. So you used to have the model of everything was happening around the conference dates. So now we are exploring the potential to organize more seminars, courses, teaching methodology, etc., along the year for our members. I think I see this as a big opportunity. I try to reflect about the future and the potential of collaboration, especially among our programs. And of course, as I said, ANPAD is a financially sound association, mainly due to the test. But of course, the test, it's not bulletproof. So we are investing, we are thinking to invest a lot on improving the test. We are also thinking to invest a lot on online platform, where I see a role, for example, for IFSAM, as I'm following along our days. Each of our association is thinking about, how to deal with the online platforms, and maybe there is a role for collaboration here, for example, in terms of structures, online platform, investment, etc. But mainly I thought about the open access publication. This is a program that is very important in the Brazilian context. Brazil and Latin American countries generally have been investing a lot in open access publication. I've been observing trends worldwide, particularly in Europe, Asian countries, to fund the open access publication. I think we have a good history, good programs, and I'm referring to Cielo. It's a basically Brazilian funded program for open access publication. It's very well known worldwide. It has a successful scholarship with Scopus, and it is included many Latin American markets. But also we have developed a product within ANPAD that we call Sibel, Scientific Periodicals Electronic Library, which gathers more than 100 academic journals, just referring to management, and we also has an impact factor for open access journal. Now, I know that I'm thinking big here. I know that I'm thinking about an impact factors that might include the rest of the world, the part of the management journals that are outside Web of Science or Scopus, but I see grounds for a lot of cooperation here. Why do I say that? One of the problems that I observe in Brazil, that it's being a very continental country, it's very self-sufficient. So different stakeholders, audiences, including academia, think about the relevance. What's more important, participating in an Academy of Management, writing research for Web of Science journals, or contributing for our local issues, for example, for a cooperative or agribusiness in the south of Brazil, etc. So this has always been a key debate in Brazil. So there is a tendency, you know, to isolate the country from the rest of the world because the country is big enough to be considered self-sufficient. The governmental regulation is being a trend towards another, you know, to keep the international participation high. So we have all of that in Brazil. We have internationally oriented programs, locally oriented programs, nationally oriented programs, and we have a huge amount of academic journals and publications that are basically open source. So we have been developing, you know, important products for to support the open access publications that would be available not just to the academia, but to different stakeholders. And we have, you know, investing in those different types of impact factors that might have a potential to connect with the rest of the world. So concretely, I mean, just to give a quick example, we have researchers that have a very high impact factors in terms of Brazil, and I'm talking about relevant impact factor that not probably the Google scholar can tackle it, can visualize it, but it's not the highest impact factors in terms of Web of Science or Scopus, etc., because they just don't publish in those types of journals. Again, so I mean, this is just food for thought. I know it's a very ambitious thinking, but I think there is too much in the rest of the world to be considered in terms of academic publications. And I see a role here for potential collaboration among different, you know, regions of the world to highlight the contributions of the open access publication, which is the more suitable model for many developing countries nowadays. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alketa, for sharing your thoughts with us. And ambitious thinking and big thinking is fantastic. And probably in times of crisis, such as the pandemic, it does force us to think differently, to think outside the box. And certainly, you know, we have made great advances in recent years in terms of open access publications. So it's interesting that you extend that to open access education. So thank you for that. So we'll circle back again, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Felicity. Felicity we might have met very fleetingly.
It seems we have some...
am I here?
Yeah, it seems that we have some delays.
Oh,
now
okay.
from you, but now it's fine.
Okay, let's go for it. So Felicity, Felicity is chair of the Irish Academy of Management, and I know, Felicity, we hosted in our school in UCD in the Smurfit School the Irish Academy of Management a couple of years ago, and it was a huge success. So so you're very welcome, and I'll hand over to you for your initial statement.
Thanks very much, Geraldine. So hello to everyone. I'm based in Waterford, which is in the southeast of Ireland. And I'm going to echo some of what both Trish and Alketa have been talking about. So I'm conscious not to repeat anything, but we face similar challenges and we'll just walk through those with you. So I just, as with my two colleagues before me, I'll just give you a brief overview of what the Irish Academy of Management is. So we're the leading professional association for management studies, research and education on the island of Ireland. So while the Irish Academy of Management does include Northern Ireland, it is part of the United Kingdom as well. And an aspect of that is our increasing collegiality with our sister academy, the British Academy of Management. And in recent times, we've been working quite closely with ANSAM as well. So I'll talk through some of what we're doing in collective space as well in terms of the British Academy of Management. As a smaller academy, this was one way as well of our reaching out and in with our members who may be actually members of both academies. We're nearly 25, formed in 1997 in Dublin City University. And as Geraldine mentioned, founding members include members of the universities, including Professor Bill Roach in University College Dublin, one of Geraldine's colleagues. We registered as a charity in 2016, and that has its own challenges and its own opportunities, and also its own costs. So that's affiliate to what both of my colleagues were speaking about earlier. We seek to promote the advancement of research, knowledge and education in the field of organisation and management studies. So if I could talk to you about some of what our challenges and opportunities, some of them pre-pandemic and some of them pandemic, and what we tried to do in the last 8 months, affiliate to that, and sometimes that necessity is the mother of invention. So as Trish was saying, we're a smaller academy. Up until the start of 2020, we had about 300 members. It isn't too bad considering Ireland has just under, the Republic of Ireland has just under 5 million people at this stage. We take it seriously that we should fill the world. So we're an increasing population in size. And when you combine that with Northern Ireland, we're just over 6 million people. The Irish university and higher education landscape is changing fundamentally in the last 3 years, excuse me, and will continue to change in the forthcoming 7 years. So at the moment, we have now 8 universities. We have a brand newly formed university, Technological University of Dublin, in 2019, and that will be joined in January by another new technological university in Munster, one of our provinces. Our remaining 3 technological universities are anticipated in the coming years, which is reducing the number of higher education institutes in Ireland substantially. We'll move from 15 what are currently called institutes of technology to an anticipated 6 in this period. When combined with our other universities that already exist, we're talking then about having 14 HEIs, which has a significant impact on our academies because these will be merged schools of business. So when we started this year, we had 3 main costs affiliate to the academy. We had the cost of being a charity, which means that we need legal support, and that don't come cheap, for want of a better phrase. We have a journal, the Irish Journal of Management, which is a ranked journal in the ABS rank of a 1-star journal. That too comes with costs because it is cost-free for the contributors. Based on what Alketa was speaking about, one of our conscious efforts is to ensure there are no financial barriers, or very few financial barriers, for research students and early career researchers. We believe that that's one of the places that we really contribute. So it echoes what Trish and Alketa were saying. So we pay for the journal. And the third cost affiliate to ourselves was our technological footprint, for want of a better word. And while we have amazing expertise on council in relation to management and business, our technological expertise is less than stellar. So we needed quite a bit of support there, and we are also conscious that our website in particular is at end of life now, and that's a new cost for us to build, as Trish was talking about, build into technology. And then we launched, we built a strategy that we launched on the 6th of March 2020. So literally the last time any of us have seen each other in person. We launched it in the University of Limerick, and we also had an inaugural session for a keystone of our strategy, which was an early career development initiative. And then we had our 300 members, we had our conference coming up in Dublin City University in August, and then of course the pandemic happened. So we realized this was an existential threat to the Academy. Our only source of income at that time was the annual conference. Much like Trish, some were more profitable than others. And while we had a fund, many of my colleagues who've known me a while say I'm a frustrated accountant. I'm a behaviourist now, but I did train in accountancy. So I looked at the figures, and Geraldine will know this. When you see figures that you realise, okay, the age here is important in terms of how much we can generate, you realise we need to look at it through a different lens. So what we did in terms of that massive challenge was that we looked to the institutes and said, can we have institutional membership that is a small fee per institute and will allow all institutional members, regardless of what faculty they are, to participate in our online events. However, we didn't have any online events on the 6th of March. We did, however, by the 1st of April. So we worked in conjunction and partnered with our sister academies. In the context of our first event, we partnered with British Academy of Management, and our 3 journals held a panel session with the editors for early career researchers at the end of April. Again, like Trish, we learned how to use Zoom very quickly and how to manage it and to record and everything. But actually what came out of the flames, the phoenix out of the flames, was that this took far greater hold than we anticipated. It sits on YouTube as in a private multimedia account. The number of attendees was far in excess of what we could have expected in an in-person environment, free of charge for both sets of members, but it gave us leverage to exhibit the benefits of the Academy now to our institutional members when we go and ask for next year's membership fee. And from there rolled a number of other events. In terms of our conference, we made the decision at that moment, because our technical expertise wasn't there, and we made the decision to postpone our conference full and to concentrate on the doctoral colloquium. And we held what transpired to be a deeply successful doctoral colloquium in late August. On the day it was supposed to be held in person, again, attendance was far greater than we anticipated, but a really interesting opportunity. The keynote speakers who were willing to take an hour out of their day were far in excess of who we could have attracted in terms of how many we could have brought and the cost of bringing them over to Ireland. Incredibly, you could see the speakers themselves. We strong-armed Michael Morley, who is a previous chair of the Irish Academy of Management and a previous chair of IFSAM, as one of the panel speakers as an example. You can see the details of that on the website. So this is generating lots of activity, but the greatest resource we're short on now is time. And Trish, you've pointed to that. We're a voluntary organisation. There are 25 of us. I'm the outgoing chair, so my colleague, Professor Anthony MacDonald, is the incoming chair. He's based in University College Cork. And this is my last event, and my chairmanship stops on the 31st of December. And in context, we're very conscious that we're pulling from our council in particular a great deal of the time. So our event next year, and this is the other big opportunity for us, our event next year is going to be a hybrid, as Trish mentioned. So a couple of the things that we've been looking at is the costing. And we believe that anything over €100 won't be accepted by the public, by the academic public. We also want to ensure that we don't have a barrier for the doctoral candidates. We've decided to try and test, no try is the wrong word, we're going to test the system with a paper development workshop for our doctoral candidates who've been accepted as abstracts probably April, May. so that we're sure the system is working for August. The system is a pre-existing system through the goodwill of one of the universities. We now have technical access to technical resource, and they're willing to work with us in terms of the website. But we've learned very quickly to consider our charity status as permission to ask for charity from our institutes. So that is kind of the key things around the challenge being early career researcher isolation and student isolation. And we're building, we're saying a minimum of 6 events per annum. The next challenge we see is the remote researcher resilience and engagement. And we are looking at some mindfulness events for them, some community events. The technological capacity I've spoken to, the academic or academy funding I've spoken to. We're not out of the woods yet. The costs of the technology are an unknown entity currently, and we've cut our claw to fit our measure. We're very conscious of the challenge of people's awareness of us now that it's online. So we are, now that many of our events are online, and their awareness of us now that we're institutional membership based. So we're working on a social media capture and marketing campaign on that basis, and we've set up a subcommittee for that. The other aspect that's there is twofold. Our own fatigue as less young researchers, is starting to show at the edges. And Trish, I was smiling and doing a lot of the head nodding as you spoke in particular about that. And it is fantastic for us to meet like this, to be honest with each other, to say, yeah, we're being pulled in many directions, particularly if we've capacity to share sessions, online sessions. In Ireland, and I don't know if it's similar in your countries, but in Ireland, outside of the big cities, and really you're counting 3 big cities there, we do have challenges with broadband. I'm bouncing off a phone at the moment. So you are in that space of being realistic about how the sessions run. The other thing that we've been doing is looking at different ways of running sessions. So we had an inaugural Distinguished International Scholar event in October, and Thomas Coken was interviewed by Professor Bill Roach. And that was a different experience. And what we're going to do, we're now converting that into a paper for the Irish Journal of Management and coupling it with a teaching note. So we can see the spin-off effect again for the contribution to our institutional members. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Felicity, for sharing your experience and your journey with us, and how incredible that you should launch your strategy on the 6th of March and we're straight into the pandemic, so I'm sure your strategy has been turned on its head at this stage. But it seems like, as you said, necessity is the mother of invention, and ask and you shall receive, another philosophy that you seem to have adopted in your charitable status. And very interesting that you would move so swiftly from an individual membership to institutional membership. So I hope that bodes well.
Yeah, I should say that Geraldine, that we so if you do a quick count there are 22 higher education institutes in Ireland, and 13 of them have joined us in total. 14 have joined us in total for this year, and our anticipation is that we're likely to, because we're in negotiations with 3 others, that we're likely to have an 80% spread by next year.
That's fantastic, Felicity. And may I ask, as a matter of interest, what annual fee you charge to the institutions?
Yeah, so Geraldine will know what I mean by this. I was raised in rural Ireland, so we were very much of the view, or I was very much, and the council were very much of the view that it should be inclusive. And the institutes themselves are under financial pressure, as we know. So we set the institutional membership as €2,000 per institute, because we knew that capacity-wise we would have sufficient, not an overly sufficient, but a sufficient fund amongst that of generating the income necessary for our fixed costs per annum. that is where we will set it for the forthcoming future. And we're also conscious as a capture of inclusivity and awareness, so we've included their alumni in that.
Excellent. And also then in terms of the institution's membership, that you're broadening it beyond the business schools, so to all faculties and all departments. So, you know, that will be incredibly fruitful, I'm sure, in terms of research and in terms of cross-disciplinary research to benefit everybody.
An unforeseen benefit of that is that in particular the engineers, I'm from a family of engineers, so I call them the engineers, almost like an occult. But in particular, software engineers and engineers have expressed a particular interest, but also the humanities, you know, the wider humanities. And what it is generating is a capture of individuals who potentially can offer cross-disciplinary collaboration for more senior researchers. One thing that I didn't mention was one of the other things that we've done is that we're launching, and Kerry in ANSAM also has worked with BAM in this way, but we've launched a BAM IAM fund for Irish-British studies in management and business, and that's launched for next year. While it is a portion of our income, it's offering people the opportunity to establish those kind of interconnectivity across borders as well as across disciplines.
Excellent, Felicity. Well, you've been very busy in your term of office, and Anthony is going to have a hard act to follow by the sounds of it. But it sounds like you've got great foundations put in place for moving forward. So we might circle back again to some of your topics and themes in our discussion, Felicity. And I'll hand over now to Kathrin Moeslein, who is, as we know, the President of the European Academy of Management. And I'm smiling here to myself as everybody shares the number of years for which your associations are of age. So I think, Kathrin, you're the baby of the family, EURAM being 20 years so far. Next up is the Irish Academy of Management. Felicity is 25. IFSAM is 30 years. ANPAD, 40 years. The European Institute of Advanced Studies in Management, where I've just taken over the role as president, will be 50 years old next year. But ASAC, Trish, you seem to be the elder lemon in the family of 60 years. So, so there's a broad range of generations, I think, represented, which is wonderful. So on that note, I'll hand over to the baby in the family, shall I, Kathrin?
Thank you so much, Geraldine. I'm happy to be the young kid in the court because I have been at all conferences that EURAM ever had, and I'm quite happy that EURAM is not as old as the German Academy of Management, because then I would be already dead. So we just come from our 20th annual conference that took place over the last few days. And so I think we were all well aware of the challenges with running a conference this year. And it was truly impressive to hear your experiences with starting so early and having your conferences in June already, as we decided to postpone from June to December in order to profit from all the experience from others and have the chance to build on it. And I can just say we had lots of fun over the last days, but for sure it also has effects on our current income and business model. So maybe first of all, EURAM is a membership organization, so individual members. I have also been involved with ASAM for many years, which is an association of schools. So Geraldine, you should be careful in your excitement about a membership organization moving into an institutional membership. So EURAM should better not copy the wonderful Irish model, because then we would start to compete instead of collaborate. So I think that's an really interesting move that I would love to understand better. Well, when I've seen the topic of this meeting and the question about challenges and opportunities, I started to reflect about the role of our associations. So being a membership association, what are we for our members? And yes, in fact, I think many of our members see us as the organization that offers an annual conference, the organization that offers a journal, or some don't even know that the journal is linked to the association, whatever. But I think the conference is still the dominant, visible entity to our members. But for sure, we could take totally different roles. So we could be a professional body representing the individual in more long-term developments. Or do we want to be the academic home, the platform for academics on which they can strive, the platforms that provide services, the platforms that provides context and infrastructure? At the moment, we definitely are not in this position because our infrastructure is worse than the infrastructure of each individual business school would be. Or do we take the role of a trusted community, so the safe harbor for academics who might come under pressure in their own institutions or in their home labor markets for academics? So I think there are more roles that we could take and that we might take. And well, I'm famous for being an optimist in my university. So whenever challenges happen or like this pandemic, for me it's a major chance that finally calls for change. Within EURAM, I remember, well, maybe 15 out of 20 years where we discussed that we should move away from this conference focus. And we discussed it again and again, and I think we discussed it in depth and in breadth, but in fact we didn't move away from our conference focus. We are now still already doing many things, but it's still a very clear conference focus. And in January we will run a strategy workshop, and I think I'm looking forward to it because it might be interesting to look at what is or can be the business model of an association under different role assumptions. And my own background is I started off as a computer scientist, that's where I did my studies. So I never studied management. I just moved for my PhD into the business school, and then was super happy and proud to be a professor of strategic management before I stepped back, and now I'm a professor in information systems, so somewhere in between. So, and currently in my role as vice president of my own university, I'm much closer to the engineers than to the business schools, in fact. So trying to bridge between schools. And I think my knowledge base, I'm much closer to understanding digital business models than understanding governance structures of scholarly associations. Which is interesting because in the first place, when I look at the scholarly association I'm now responsible for, I look at it from the perspective of business model, digital business model, and would first see the deficiencies from that perspective. Key questions that I would like to better understand in the next 6 months or so of my presidency is who is mainly, or which associations are mainly active in driving research policy agendas, because I think we should have more of a say in how research policy agendas come up, and I don't see major influence at the moment. Equally, who is influencing educational policies? Yes, they get more and more similar across Europe, and we seem to accept many changes, and now everyone starts to talk about micro-credentials, and it feels like the new noise that we have to listen to. But I'm not so sure whether we have a say in that and whether we really take a position in influencing those developments. And finally, and I think that links back to the business model, I'm asking myself, who is focusing on shaping the agenda of funding agencies? Because in my country, in Germany, I understand that very well. And the best thing a university can do is to get involved. And if as a university you get involved in shaping the research policy of your country, then you have the chance also to shape the call for projects, call for proposals for certain areas. And if you write the call for proposals, then your researchers also have a much better chance in winning their proposals. So I think there is a reason for these kinds of well-crafted funding mechanisms. And I don't see that, or I have to openly admit that as EURAM, we are so far not part of it. And I would be interested in to what extent you see your organizations in a position that is already part of that game, or whether there would be reasons to stay out of that game. So all in all, and I would like to maybe already stop here in order to have more time for a discussion. All in all, I would love to see an association like, or an academy like EURAM, having a real role in shaping and enabling the ecosystem for individual academics. So giving them the ecosystem, the context they need. And there is a reason that, or why I see that as a really important mission, because I'm grown up in an academic sense in a university which at that time didn't have a business school. Only 2 business professors. So being a young academic in that setting, I only had access to what this university had access to. And when I moved to London Business School, I saw that there's a bigger universe. And for the first time, as a young academic, I realized that if you sit in an institution that doesn't give you access to the resources that are out there, you don't even see that you don't have access to those resources. And to me, this is a really, really dangerous game, that only if you sit in a powerful institution, you see the full universe. If you sit in a institution that cannot afford all these platforms, databases, access routes, then you see a smaller universe and you don't even get a signal what you miss. And this is shaping careers, and it's basically blocking careers. It's blocking individuals from access in a really unfair way. And I'm grown up in one of the richest universities in Germany, so TU Munich. So there was no reason or there's no reason to complain about poverty. But I realized that how restricted the view of academics is if you don't see the full picture. And I think as associations, we should give everyone at least access to the resources they need, or they need to see in order to know that they need access somehow. So you also notice I still don't have a solution for that, but that would be a more long-term mission to open those doors for academics and equalize access across different institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathrin, for your insights and your shared experience also as a young academic, and that notion of, as associations, what role can we play in achieving greater equity across young researchers in terms of access to all sorts of resources that are possible, is a really interesting question that you pose. I suppose certainly within EASM, you know, that is one of our missions in terms of doctoral education within our Eden program. But you do raise a very interesting question, and it's not until you have that experience as a young researcher of visiting another university that your eyes may be opened to the possibilities or to things that perhaps you have been denied, as you say, you didn't know that you didn't have access to them, you didn't know what you were missing. Yeah, and I think your suggestion about also being at the table in terms of being involved at the funding agencies, in terms of identifying what are the research agendas that are important globally, you know, and to society, and how might we be involved. And I suppose traditionally it's been our own institutions or national contacts who are at that particular table, and I suppose sometimes it's been left up to us as researchers to know about those national contacts who are at the table, for example, at the European Commission in deciding on the next research agenda. So I think that's really interesting, and you know, and maybe it's something as a collective of associations that we could maybe work together on and collaborate in that regard. And collaborating together might be more powerful than as individual associations. So thank you for sharing your challenges and opportunities and questions indeed, Kathrin. So Xavier, I know we have our 2 recordings. So is Isabelle up next? Are you ready to show Isabelle's recording?
Let's hope so. Let's see if technology is with us today. So let's see if I find this. It should be one of these. Let me show first. I have a more handy Zhang's video now, if that's okay.
Okay.
Is that
perfect?
Okay?
Thank you, Xavier.
Sure. So, because I have to check whether I'm drawing on the right file. And tell me if you can hear the sound. I don't know if I have to share the computer.
Yeah, you do. And make sure not to mute Xavier, because I have made that mistake before. I'm muted and nobody could hear.
Okay, so now.
Did you check the box share sound in the sharing window?
Yes, I did that. Now the issue is I want to bring the video back to the origin.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, can you hear
I've thought a lot about the pandemic.
Let's see. From the beginning.
Greetings, dear colleagues and friends.
My sound is gone now, Xavier.
Okay.
Can anybody else hear it? We could hear it initially.
Could you hear it?
We
Sorry?
could.
You could?
It stopped on my screen. So the video and the sound stopped.
But could you hear it?
Yes.
The first 3 seconds, yes.
Okay. So let's try again.
Thank you, Xavier.
No worries. This is a learning experience, isn't it? Okay. Now I'm sharing. And then.
Greetings, dear colleagues and friends. I'm Zhang Yang. As the president of IFSAM, I'm happy to know that all of you are doing well in this special time. In the last few months, I've thought a lot about the pandemic, management culture, and IFSAM. And I'm honored to share my thoughts with you. I will mainly talk about 3 things. The first is about the influences of COVID-19 on our society and economy in general.
It stopped again, Xavier.
Okay, I see the problem. Sorry about that.
Okay, third time lucky.
I was trying to prepare for the next, for Isabel's video, and this is what happens, right, when you are multitasking. So,
why don't I try to work on Isabel's recording? I'll have that ready, and you just focus on playing Zhang.
Yes. That's what I was planning to do right now. But yes, if you can work and get Isabel's, it will be great. So let's see. Back to Zhang. And then I promise I won't move anything. So I'll bring it some minutes back.
Confirmed to be affected, and nearly 1.5 million people died of it. COVID-19 is becoming literally the first global plague in the human history. Although the bad impact of the pandemic has not yet been completely eliminated, we are pleased to see that we have made great progresses and brought great results, especially in areas of Eastern management culture. COVID-19 is under control. For example, the unemployment rate of China and Japan last month was 5.3% and 3.1% respectively, which is relatively low. Last month, the manufacturing PMI of China hit a new high since September 2017. Societies are thriving. Social functions are gradually restored. Schools, public places, entertainment facilities, and so on are reopening in an orderly manner. The second thing, as a management scholar, the above fact made me to think about the role of management culture in the practice of fighting against the pandemic. Management culture is a kind of social culture acting on the entire culture system. It also represents a knowledge system that reflects management activities. Additionally, management culture serves as the theoretical and practical method of acquiring management knowledge system and leads to innovation of management and strategy. Among many forms of management cultures, I would like to emphasize Eastern management culture. Eastern management culture means people-oriented, privileging morality, and serving the people actively. In the era of globalization, solving global problems requires the cooperation and the progress of all mankind. Management scholars from worldwide need to respect each other, promote the communication and the cooperation of different management cultures, put forward practical suggestions, and achieve the unity of knowledge and action. In the last part of my speech, as a passing president, I would like to say something about IFSAM. As an international federation of scholarly associations of management, we aim at management education, research, and knowledge share, and shall communicate, united, and cooperate. In globalization times, many management associations have interest in IFSAM. The number of members is our base. We are happy that in the past 2 years, especially this year, many new associations join IFSAM. We welcome more management associations to join us. In the changing world, the strategic reformation is necessary for the mission and development of IFSAM. Some of our member colleagues have very good ideas. Let's take strategic actions and work together. Thank you.
All right, so I hope that worked in the third attempt. And you have Isabelle's ready?
Thank you so much, Zhang. Yes. I shall share now.
Wait a second, I need to give you the rights. You should have them now.
Yes, I do. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
Downloaded Isabelle's file. So I shall share my screen first. Here she is. Hopefully this will play. Can you see that?
My name is Professor Isabelle Bouty, and I have the honor to be the current president of the International Association of Strategy.
Geraldine, we have no sound.
I'm muted.
At IMS,
I apologize. I did what I advised you not to do. I went on mute.
President of the International Association of Strategic Management, AIMS, from France. We became a member of IFSAM in the fall of 2020, and we are very happy and proud to having joined this federation. I would have very much liked to participate live to the panel, but I am currently in class, which explains this video. It is a little bit artificial, and I apologize for that. The theme of this panel, Key Challenges for Management Learned Societies as a Consequence of the Pandemic, is particularly difficult, and we all have been confronted with this issue directly or indirectly. 2020 is an exceptional year indeed. At AIMS, we are an active and inclusive community of researchers with approximately 350 members. Our annual conference traditionally takes place the first week of June. And last April, when in France, it appeared definitely impossible to continue with the 2020 conference in the traditional format, the board and the organizing committee had to react very quickly. And we chose to shift the conference to an online format and to adapt the presentation and exchange modalities as best as we could. Indeed, it seemed to us undesirable and in fact totally unthinkable and impossible to spend a full year without scientific exchanges, without discussion, without confrontation of ideas. So we jumped at it, believing that whoever tries nothing has nothing. Naturally, it took a lot of work, energy, and enthusiasm to bring this transformation to a successful conclusion in just a few weeks. I will not deny that there have been strong, exciting moments, but also more difficult ones, times of doubt. We had to imagine a new format, improvise, challenge, both in terms of organizing and of selecting technological solutions. But we also took opportunity to introduce some innovation. And finally, we were happy to have the full support of the community and a massive and enthusiastic participation in the conference. We learned a lot from this experience, which made tangible the possibility and potential of new interaction modalities. It was very exciting indeed. But we also drew some new issues from this experience. Among these new issues, I would like to cite three main ones. They all begin in the same way. Although with online conferences, we have now a concrete way to reduce our environmental footprint and maintain a good quality scientific interaction, how to, number one, strike the right balance between online and face-to-face interactions and activities to sustain research practice. Number two, how to adapt the association's revenue model to maintain the structure. And number three, how to maintain a rich dialogue between all colleagues and in particular, avoid that those from richer institutions can continue to physically attend conferences and strengthen their networks, when others would have to settle for remote attendance only and for looser networks and therefore a less audible audience. All in all, do we see specific opportunities for management-learned societies as a consequence of the pandemic? Yes, of course we do. It is clear that certain activities can be conducted online without any loss in terms of content quality and perhaps with even greater inclusiveness. The online format also allows for greater innovation and novelty, and this is really exciting. Last, perhaps the online format is also an opportunity to increase our visibility and accessibility and to the world of management practitioners. In fact, all this indirectly questions the contribution of our associations to their communities. It thus brings to the forefront the fundamental question of the collective conditions of the production of management knowledge. As a conclusion, I would say that all of this also raises questions about the association's portfolio of activities, how to balance the ways in which these activities are carried out, and with which consequences. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a fruitful debate and an enriching panel, and also a very good day to you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to Zhang and to Isabelle, who took the time and energy to plan and to record. Sometimes it's easier to do things live than it is to record. So thank you so much indeed, because I know it takes a lot of effort and sometimes the technology can break down as well. So thank you so much to each of our 6 panel members for sharing your insights. I think a bit like Kathrin, I think Isabelle had more questions maybe than answers, but I think that will lead to a really fruitful and rich discussion. So I'm going to open it to the floor now to panel members and non-panel members to maybe have a discussion around some of the themes that have emerged on our challenges, so and indeed opportunities. So might we begin with some of those themes that have emerged surrounding innovation. Felicity, you also mentioned necessity being the mother of invention. Isabelle has talked about that as well. She also talked about the increased participation and enthusiastic participation of conference members. So too did you, Trish and Felicity. So, so shall I open the floor to our other guests this afternoon to comment?
Xavier, Jordan, maybe I'll just make make one or two observations, partly about our conversation today, and linked with the conversation that we've been having over the past few days. And two things in particular strike me. One is, in a sense, some of the universality of the issues that our societies face. There is a sense in which I think most academic associations have been facing, relatively significant challenges, partly arising out of COVID, but also, of course, a bigger set of issues. And I was particularly struck by something Trish said at the very beginning about the extent to which, a more local association conference, one way or another, might become less valued in the exchange of ideas than might others. And I think this is a great challenge. And it's something that obviously I think all of us have to work hard to safeguard, because there's a fundamental importance to the local as well as the global. And I think how we maintain and buttress societies to be able to do that is a very important pressing question. And the other issue for me is, the extent to which we can break out of what many people refer to as a dominant mindset or a dominant analytical mindset. I think all of us, one way or another, become relatively institutionalized over time. And it's very difficult to break out of that mindset. And I think in some ways, the pandemic creates this strange opportunity also, where we can really begin to revisit some of the fundamental assumptions that we have made about what it is we value in teaching, in research, and indeed in service to our societies. Thank you.
If I may, thank you, Geraldine. I would like to build on, first of all, I would like to say that, I find really the contributions and the exchange really very interesting and very valuable. And building on Michael's comment, it seems to me that there is kind of a challenge / opportunity in the sense that, yes, online interaction democratizes access. It allows for much wider access. People don't have to pay for the travel and the accommodation. The registration fee is rather reasonable. It's half or even sometimes less. I think one of the problems that we face now in Europe is egos anchoring, mental anchoring on 10 euros for the online colloquium this year, which had a big effect on the other associations coming after in the pricing. So the issue that Trish was raising, right, is the willingness to pay of members. And also Felicity referred to this. Will people be interested now that they can attend any conference in the world which is being offered online? Which one will they pick, knowing that they will have even more limited budget? They won't have to pay for the travel and accommodation, but they will still have to pay for the membership fee and for the registration fee. So my concern is, well, or the kind of the issue that worries me is that there are some associations which are much bigger, better endowed, more prepared, and which might capture a large number of people who were attending the more regional or domestic conferences, but that now online they can attend this bigger conference. So I think that this is an issue. Of course, we hope that we will regain at least soon in 2022 the hybrid format. But for 2021, we'll have to endure it. We'll have to endure 2021. And I'm concerned that there might be a shakeout. The other side of this, and I think that Alketa did a wonderful job, I mean, everyone did a wonderful job in explaining the context in which its organization is, but I think that the Brazilian case is particularly salient in that there might be a movement towards inward focusing, right? To focusing to more local or domestic issues, which from the practice point of view, from a relevance point of view, it's not bad, because indeed our research and our teaching should try to help the problems, right? To solve the problems of each territory where we are based. But this might actually also make difficult to people from those organizations which now are incentivized to focus on more local issues. It might make it to them more difficult to be aware and access the resources that Kathrin was referring to, right? Of what are the options in terms of an more international career. So I think that these are two main challenges that that I feel that us, as the community of leaders of associations, need to somewhat address. I think, and if some context provides a place. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Kathrin, you want to come in there to contribute?
Maybe just a very short provocation. I would say maybe it's a really great chance to get out of this awful beauty contest. Because when I first joined academia, I was a bit surprised about all this travel and usually many academics choosing on the nicest location. And it usually depends on, the main question is, what's the weather like? Is it nice? Is it close to a beach? I soon learned this routine of an academic for picking the nicest conferences. At that time, when I was a young academic, I tried to find funding to regularly go to SMS, the by far most expensive conference at that time, with the best food. And we immediately started a competition among postdocs to find the most outstanding conferences and locations and so on. So I think it was already at that time making fun of what we observed as academia being basically a beauty contest and a nice extension of family holidays or whatsoever. And as I said, my own field is computer science, information systems. So I can also claim my own field, where the biggest and most important conference is HICS in January. So it's a Hawaii International Conference on System Sciences. And this is where you have to be, and the whole year you discuss on which island and who will be there and which drinks and whether Mai Tai, So let's get out of that and focus on the core of what academia is about, and maybe it's a chance to differentiate and not find the one model, but each organization has to find its own competitive advantage and be attractive. And then Xavier, maybe a small niche organization could find an offering that is really competitive with any rich, big, whatever association that so far was dominating the market. So I'm quite optimistic that it will stimulate creativity and get us out of this wonderful tourism we were used to.
Thank you, Kathrin, for your optimism and for your, I love your link with a beauty contest in terms of beautiful locations. So yeah, we've a lot of people who want to come in here. Alketa wants to come in, and then Phyllis, and then Kerry, you might want to comment on your item in the chat. So Alketa first up, and then Phyllis.
Thank you, Geraldine. Well, yes, I agree completely with Kathrin. As a matter of fact, I think that the event-centered model of association was already in problem before the pandemic. There was a competition between which conference you want to go in. So if there was, it was depending on the location, the funding, I mean, et cetera, et cetera. So it's impossible. Actually, I consider it to be impossible to follow the event-centered model for our associations. I think what I've learned from pandemic and what we are discussing in our board, it's to have something more constant along the year and to deliver, more benefit, more value for our members. And this is, I think, the most difficult issue to deal with, because as I tried to say, we have many audiences within the academy, within the Brazilian academy, but I think this is also an issue of any academy, of any association. So we have different members with different profile, and it's my thing that we probably need to tackle those issues that serve as bridges between our different associations. So what will be those boundary themes, something to connect. I think that probably we need to think hard of those connections. So and those would be the point for collaborations. I don't believe in the events anymore. I think I'm talking from a perspective of an association that will probably has a demand, but I'm just referring to international competition. I didn't refer to the national competition. So we have a competition in terms of the event, even within Brazil. So I don't think we're going anywhere with any kind of innovation that we can do in terms of the event format. We need to think of something different. We need to think of the themes that bridge and collaboration. And that's why I bring the open access, because I'm seeing, movement, not just in Brazil, I'm seeing movement everywhere. And in the same vein, just thinking about alternative issues that can bridge our communities in specific points, in specific collaborative projects that might, be materialized in short, medium, or long term, but not events. I mean, I don't see too much innovation going on in terms of events.
Thank you, Alketa. Phyllis, over to you. You're still on mute, Phyllis.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, right. I will echo Alketa's comments a few minutes ago. First of all, I think today we have broadly and narrowly expressed our common concerns of the dilemmas of all associations, international or local. And I think there are three words can be used together or to describe the current situation, namely independent, dependent, and interdependent. All three scenarios are in existence today. And I think we also have discussed the localization, the local interest for the participants. So combine what we have discussed so far, I agree with Alketa that the key word is collaboration. Even furthermore, we need to collaborate with each other and across continents. And one of the dilemmas that we have experienced is the funding for publication, funding for research. And I think maybe we can try hard to find some regions or some countries with the government which still provide good, handsome research grants, and we can collaborate with them. For example, I can collaborate with some researchers in Taiwan because the Taiwanese government provides good research funding for university research, or China. We just need to find one country maybe we can depend on government, or we can also depend on enterprises. We can find some seed money for our association. We cannot just depend on conference fees. We cannot just depend on membership fees. We really need to do some campaign to find some seed money to sustain our organization. So we know that, gee, we will have budget to sustain us for the next 3 years. So campaigning for association seed money or funds, perhaps one. And then number two, I said that collaboration with researchers from other continents where handsome grants or scholarship funds are provided. And then another point is about the publication. As we all know that universities, when time comes for the annual evaluation, sometimes they only give credits to have your article, when your articles are published in reputable journals and not books. Or sometimes some individuals write, some researchers write a good chapter for a book, but you don't get much credit, as in contrast to articles published in journals. So then we, for that matter, then so even more so for our association, we need to further establish the credibility of our publications, of our journals. That's my comment.
Thank you, Phyllis. And you framed that very nicely in terms of the dilemmas and, you know, independent, dependent, and interdependent. And it seems that we're developing a consensus that collaboration, as you say, is key, and that maybe moving forward rather than competition, that collaboration amongst us is important. But then that's the challenge, as Kathrin talked about earlier, in terms of how do we maintain our uniqueness while also collaborating. So that might be, you know, something that we need to tease out and think about more deeply. And I think your point, Kerry, in the chat links into that notion of collaboration and competition. Will I hand over to you, Kerry?
Yeah, it was just a small point, I think, though, but the big point for me is that as has been pointed out, the Australian New Zealand Academy of Management has been working to collaborate with the Irish Academy and the British Academy, and it's really been nothing short of a miracle that we're all here over the past 3 or 4 days, all on screen, all together, building a new collaborative force. So together. So I think that's you know, I could not have been able to do this from Australia in as much intensity as what has happened in these last few days. So I'm really appreciative of that ability to do that. But I do think that there are limits. Like, one conference cannot put everybody in the whole world onto one platform. There's obviously papers that are being reviewed. There's obviously a kind of a limit to how much one organisation or a series of organisations can soak up. So I think there'll be some obviously shakeout, and we're developing a member strategy rather than an institutional strategy. But I loved your institutional strategy, Felicity, because I think that built a very strong underpinning for going forward. Ours is a member strategy with a lot of professional development as a part of it, and that's and a hybrid conference at the end. So that's where we're working towards. But the fact that everybody has been so generous, I've found that everyone's so generous about sharing their ideas and their resources to help everybody. I think that's also a great step forward for us.
Thank you, Kerry. And yes, it doesn't seem that in terms of technology, that we will definitely need to collaborate, because not all of our associations will be able to fund the financing. And if there is a platform that is suitable for what we do, why not share that, and why not co-invest in that? Felicity, I saw your hand going half up. Did you want to contribute?
Just thinking about what Kerry and Kathrin and others were saying in terms of collaboration, and how do you emulate that if we are in this virtual space? A conference is only partially dissemination, certainly in the Irish context. So, you know, what we would normally do is the water cooler conversations or the conference dinner, that's where we start to seed the ideas, particularly in terms of going together as institutes or as different schools in terms of funding. And I think that it's really important for us to work out how we can achieve that while we're as far away. I'm as far away from Michael at the moment and Geraldine as I am from any of you, because we have a county bound lockdown in Ireland. So I can no more go to Limerick than I can go to Adelaide, Kerry. So in context, we've the same challenges regardless of whether we're in country or multi-country. And when I listen to the guys, there is so much potential there for us to be cleverer about how we engage collaborative activity. I know we're using breakout rooms at the moment, but surely there's better ways of emulating that seeds in relation to funding. And I go back to Catherine's point, because I think that's a really important one. Kathrin, you spoke there about, let me just dig out the sentence you used, who is focusing on shaping the research funding policy? I think that's vital for management and business schools across the globe. And I think it's vital for all of us to try and work out how we can get our voice heard, because just on a national level, it's really hard to get your voice heard in business and management. We tend to be entirely hidden in humanities and social sciences without an appreciation of all the disciplines we touch on. So if there's a means through this lens to facilitate that conversation and bring it up out of conversation and into action, I think that may be really a key outcome from the events of the last few days.
Thank you, Felicity. And that kind of circles back to Phyllis's point also in terms of campaigning for seed funding. You know, that our business model heretofore of relying on our conference attendees to fund our activities for the year doesn't seem to be possible any longer, and therefore we have to rethink a new business model and therefore new funding. So Phyllis, I think your suggestion is very innovative and enlightening, and is something that we should probably take away to think how do we obtain that seed funding, from what types of organizations nationally, internationally might we achieve that funding. I'm conscious there's other people at our meeting who might like to chip in. Stefan, thank you.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. I totally agree that we have to rethink the conference model, and that the question raised how we get our funds is vital. And we should look, I think, into other disciplines. I lately saw a statistic that management is the most internally funded disciplines in all the sciences we can see. So obviously we have a problem here. And at the same time, I think we still believe that we are relevant for practice in terms of that the management capability is decisive, for example, in dealing successfully or not so successfully with a crisis. So why wouldn't it be a good strategy to make that more transparent to the outside, that we may be as decisive in a crisis like the Corona crisis, like the discipline of medicine or like the discipline of virologists in showing how good or bad management practices can, on the one side, help, on the other side, endanger how countries, how organizations, how society deal with the effects of the crisis, make that transparent, especially to politics, make that also transparent to non-profit organizations like the Red Cross or others, and then ask for more funding, because we will depend on that for our future research.
Thank you, Stefan. And you make a very valid point in terms of the funding to management science. Leadership that has been displayed in if that is creating some visibility about the importance of leadership and management in times of crisis and non-crisis periods as well, because in the globe we do move from one crisis to another. And in that, having that preparedness and robustness for managing.
Geraldine, your connection is not, again, is giving some problems, but I guess we are getting to the end of this session, and I would like first to thank so much Geraldine for chairing this session in a brilliant way, and also the preparation that she worked on with the different panelists. Thank you so much, Geraldine. And in closing, on behalf of Sibel Yamak, who couldn't be with us today because she's participating in the doctoral colloquium of EURAM, given her, as we know, strong commitment, very strong commitment to the education and of the next generations. Let me thank you all for participating in today's session. And I'm so happy to have heard the word collaboration being enunciated by almost everyone. And this is what IFSAM is about, is to facilitate the collaboration, to facilitate the emergence of ideas for collaboration, and hopefully also to facilitate their implementation, but fundamentally to facilitate the emergence of ideas of collaboration. And I think that Phyllis made a very good point, indeed, regarding dependence and interdependence. However, I'm concerned that if we diversify the sources of funding, if we don't rely anymore fundamentally on our members, we might lose our independence as scholarly associations of management. If we are funded by governments or by corporations, we might lose our independence. And I think that we need to preserve the scholarly independence, because these other entities have their own interests. Even having institutional membership, which is very good, but if it's only institutional membership or primarily institutional membership, again, the concerns of universities or business schools or management schools might overtake the interest of scholarship. And I think that it's important that we try to think about, while trying to find the ways of sustaining our organizations, that we remain independent to be able to defend the values of scholarship. So thank you so much again, and we hope that we'll be in touch in the IFSAM Council, and that new members will come into IFSAM, and look out for the call for the 2022 IFSAM Congress, which will probably be hybrid mode, and which will focus, as I said, on trying to attract research on the best ways of conducting research in different parts of the world, on the best ways of educating in different parts of the world, and in the best ways of managing organizations in different contexts in the world. Thank you again. Some of you, I'll see you tomorrow for the 30-year celebration, and have a great rest of the day wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier.
Thanks, Geraldine. Thanks, Xavier. Thanks, colleagues. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You too. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.